Hello there, and welcome back to episode number 82 of Inside the Vault, a Carolina Panthers podcast. I am your host, Ryan Smith, and tonight my guest is a Patriots contributor, editor for The Lead SM, and also a Patriots lead as well. Also, for NBA folks out there, he also does fan sided and Celtics lead for Sleeper Celtics. But let's welcome to the pod discussing Patriots today, TJ Mabardy. TJ, how's it going, buddy?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Good. I'm so glad to have you. We did this on my other podcast, Winning the Division, when we previewed AFC East back in the summer. So glad to have you back on my Panthers podcast. It's Panthers Patriots coming up on Sunday at 1 o'clock on Fox there in up in Foxboro, Massachusetts. So both teams coming in at 1-2 record overall. Let's just get right into it. What is your overall thoughts on the Patriots from their 1-2 start in this 2025 season?
Well, I think that obviously the Patriots came in this year understanding it was going to be a huge year of turnover with, of course, starting at the head coach with Gerard Mayo, moving into Mike Vrabel. The hope was that the Patriots could be a more serious team. They spent big in the offseason on some defensive acquisitions, a couple guys on offense as well. And they are certainly a more talented team than they were last season. That said, it has not been the start that a lot of fans have hoped for in terms of some of the discipline, just knowing how successful Mike Vrabel's teams were in Tennessee, the type of culture setter reputation that he has.
Yeah.
And there has been a lot of dysfunction for the Patriots up to this point. They're upwards of 20 penalties. They're in the upper echelon of the NFL in that category. And along with some of his post-game quotes about how he's been pretty dismissive of them, there is a little bit of angst, I think, from fans just about the not looking quite as fundamental as a lot of fans were hoping for. Personally, I'm not all that surprised. They came into week one with over 50% of their roster from last season gone. So managing all of that turnover on the fly is a difficult process, as we know.
Yes.
Preseason only does so much for you. So it really seems like the Patriots are working through some of those growing pains. But overall, I'm still pretty optimistic that it seems like they're trending in the right direction. Drake May definitely has had his lumps through these first 3 weeks, but I think we see an upwards trajectory from him. So personally, I am feeling good about the direction the team is headed in, while also acknowledging they still have a very long way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned Drake May. I'll start with him. Obviously, he is from here in North Carolina, UNC graduate, Charlotte, North Carolina, born and raised. So, Panther fans and the state of North Carolina really is very familiar with Drake May and his background and his family. His dad was a former basketball legend there at UNC. So, very
Big
familiar.
time
And
basketball family as a whole as well.
yeah, yes, and one brother played baseball as well. Yeah, so
Luke
very
May, I
familiar.
think, was on the basketball team.
Yes. Yeah. So very familiar with Drake May. He's 785 passing yards this season as a whole. You mentioned a little bit of kind of his lumps and struggles, especially last game. Um, do you know his health going into this week? It looked like he had a nasty kind of back of the head hit there in the middle of the game. Did he officially have a concussion after the game? Is he okay? What is his status for this week?
He's expected to play. He was pretty dismissive of the injury. It was
Yeah.
definitely a concern in the moment. And when you talk about some of those growing pains, he just takes hits that he needs to avoid.
Yeah.
Obviously,
Yeah.
as the franchise can't be affording to, when you're staring down TJ Watt coming off one end and it was Herbig coming off the other, just get rid of the ball before you put yourself in harm's way.
Yeah.
But he had an interesting quote post game about how he just tried to hop back up as soon as possible so he wouldn't get evaluated. They didn't evaluate him in game, and all indications up to this point are that he is expected to play, but he did miss some time last year with a concussion as well. So I would imagine they're going to do their due diligence with making sure that he's good to go. I think he should be in the clear, though.
Got it. Some other notable pieces for the Patriots. We talk about the running game, Ramondre Stevenson, Travion Henderson, Antonio Gibson. Obviously, Travion Henderson had some preseason highlights, the Ohio State running back. Obviously, it's been well documented. Stevenson has had a fumbling issue. Do you think we're going to see more against the Panthers? Travion Henderson. I know Patriots fans would love to see that happen. How do you think that running back room is going to shake out? Oh,
And would love to see it as well. Especially just Stevenson is such a frustrating player because this is one of the highest six paid running backs in the NFL in terms of total value. He was one of the few Patriots from those middling to bad teams at the end of the Belichick era that it looked like could be an impact player moving forward. And
yeah,
then, like you said, led the league. It led all running backs and fumbles last season with seven. And he was coming off of an awesome performance in week two against the Dolphins, where he was just so well rounded, got involved in the passing game as well, caught Drake May's longest pass up to this point in his career. So I was finally hopping back on board. And then two fumbles on the opening drive and on the goal line, two major spots where you just can't have that. And as a result, it's tough because the issue with Travion Henderson, and I am very optimistic about the talent with him, is that he has been just a straight up liability in pass coverage. And obviously, that's not a trait that most fans really care about when you're
right.
talking about running backs, but it's something that has been holding him off the field because especially week two against the Dolphins, it was brutal. Allowed two sacks, had another holding penalty, and he allowed another pressure last week against the Steelers. So I think that he is going to be more prominently featured against the Steelers. He had 43% of the snaps because Ramondre was basically just hitting the bench after that second fumble, and then Antonio Gibson followed that up with a fumble as well. So it was the first time Henderson has saw the most amount of snaps out of that running back room. I think that that's probably going to be a trend moving forward, but I do think with some of those limitations in Henderson's pass blocking ability that we are still going to see some level of a committee. That's going to be one of my number one storylines to watch for the Patriots this upcoming week is to see how they decide to handle this.
Yeah. Let's switch to the defensive side of the ball. Two notable players, Milton Williams, former Eagle, coming over from Philadelphia, 8 tackles this season, 2 sacks, 5 tackles for a loss. Panthers almost signed Milton Williams. That whole thing
Right.
was very sudden, and then all of a sudden he was a Patriot. So we won't talk about that. That's not what my question is. But Milton Williams obviously being an important part of that defense. Obviously, Christian Barrymore, obviously the veteran there as well. But then the piece in the secondary that everybody wants to know is obviously Christian Gonzalez. He's had that severe hamstring injury and has not played this season. What has your thoughts been on the defensive side of the ball this season? And do you think Christian Gonzalez has a chance of suiting up on Sunday?
Yeah, so Christian Gonzalez, I'll start there. Obviously, the Patriots lone all pro on offense or defense. They had Brendan Schooler, the special teamer, but Christian Gonzalez was really the gem for the Patriots last season. And from late July until last week, he was not even on the field. So he was finally back at practice last week with limited participation,
Hmm.
be able to play last week. Obviously, that doesn't end up being the case. And fingers crossed, hoping to see him back because the secondary is badly missing him right now. And the Patriots went out, they signed Carlton Davis in the offseason as well. And I was really optimistic that the combination of Gonzalez and Davis could be a lockdown man coverage secondary. And without Gonzalez, it's been a lot more lackluster, especially with Alex Austin, who is shown flashes, but the penalties were a huge issue for him. He started the game and then got pulled after just 14 snaps because he had two penalties. So they've really been hurting, especially with the inexperience in that safety room because Jabril Peppers was a surprise release after cut day. So they get rid of him. Kyle Duggar has been demoted to sort of a bench utility role. So they have Jalen Hawkins and Craig Woodson back there. Woodson being a rookie, Hawkins not been with the Patriots all that long. He's been very hit or miss up to this point. So the Patriots are certainly missing Christian Gonzalez right now, and I think that their fastball would be playing man coverage. But without that, they've had to sort of adjust their strategy. But the positive end of this is their front seven has been awesome, specifically their defensive line. I'll actually focus on that because the linebackers have also had their issues. Robert Spillane, huge bounce back game against the Steelers this past weekend, but him and Christian Ellis were both at the top of the league in missed tackles this past week. Spillane was able to bounce back, but Ellis, again, he was another starter that was pulled during the game because he was really struggling once again. But that front line has been awesome, and it's led to the Patriots being a top five rush defense in rush EPA. They've been shutting down backs. Now, obviously, they haven't faced necessarily the most dynamic rushing games between the Raiders, Dolphins, and Steelers, but they have been awesome. They've been able to also impact the passing game as well. Milton Williams, Harold Landry, both already proving their worth on their new contracts. So overall, I think that the defense, considering what they were last season, especially, again, step forward, but just like the rest of this Patriots team, and really what the theme has been, still some big time imperfections that they are actively working through. Gonzalez should help some of it, but is not the fix all for all of the issues that they've accumulated so far.
Yeah. No, that was good. And I think, honestly, the Panthers are in a pretty similar situation when it comes to the rebuild with the Patriots. I think they're about a year or two ahead. But when it comes to this matchup on Sunday, I think it's going to be two teams, and we'll kind of get into the keys here in a second. I think both these teams are desperately trying to get to 500. Both teams have clearly have not played their best ball through some of those games. Obviously, the Panthers coming off a 30-0 shutout of their division rival Atlanta Falcons, so obviously something clicked last game. And then, of course, as we like to say down here in Carolina, the instead of the Grim Reaper, the Carolina Reaper struck again with the Falcons, then firing their quarterbacks or wide receivers coach Ike Hilliard. So it seems like when Bryce Young beats a team, they just something happens to the other team's employers. So it's kind of interesting there. But
Spoiled the playoff hopes last year too,
yeah,
right? Week 18.
exactly. Yeah. Um, but yeah, let's get into kind of some keys to of the game, players to watch. We'll start on the offensive side of the ball for the Patriots and defensive side for my Panthers. Um, for me, I want to see with our Panthers, can we put pressure on Drake May and force him into bad situations, kind of like he had last week? Obviously, Will Campbell is the left tackle there, your rookie left tackle protecting his blind side. And can our defense really, at the same time, can we get off the field? Can we actually make you guys one dimensional and really kind of build off the Atlanta game this past week? Because no offense to Ramondre Stevenson, he's not Bijan Robinson. Drake May is not Michael Penix Jr. Even though they're actually pretty similar because they're both second year players. And Drake London is not Stephon Diggs, an older version of Stephon Diggs. So. What is your thoughts kind of on the offensive side of the ball for the Patriots against this Carolina defense? Some players to watch and kind of keys to the game.
Yeah. So, like I mentioned from the top, I won't go too in depth here, but that running back room is be a huge question mark for the Patriots because the Panthers, they're a very solid all around, but I do think that there should theoretically be opportunities, and the Patriots have done a better job of building the running game week by week. Last week, I mean, it still wasn't great. They were 2.9 yards per carry on handoffs alone. Now, May gives a little bit extra dynamicism with his running ability as well, so that's something that definitely helps to that cause. But the offensive line really is week in, week out, one of the biggest keys for this Patriots team because they were the worst group in the NFL last season. And like you mentioned, a lot of new pieces in place this year, starting with Will Campbell on the left side of the the left tackle's position. And I feel like overall, the Patriots have really struggled with communication across the board on some of these stunts. They've gotten tripped up with being able to pass off defenders in the run game as well. They've been pretty lackluster getting an actual push in front of them. So the Patriots, like in week two, they did a good job of holding up when the Dolphins pretty much just rushed four on a regular basis against them. Meanwhile, you saw a lot more upfront movement from both the Raiders and the Steelers, and we saw a lot of sacks as a result, and that's where we saw Drake May get a little bit more finicky and turnover prone. And for as good as I think May flashed in a lot of instances last week, he had the one interception in the red zone. He could have had two more in that game as well. And in both of those situations, it was him dealing with pressure. That's when he starts to revert to a little bit of happy feet in the pocket and gets knocked off of his game a little bit.
Yeah.
So for the Panthers, obviously they have invested in that defensive front with Derek Brown up front. And then they went out. I know they drafted a couple of edge rushers that I really liked coming into the draft as well. So I'm curious how the Panthers are going to try and attack that offensive line because I think the Pats can actually hold up decently well in standard situations. They've done a really good job as well of adapting. I think Josh McDaniels has done a great job with some of the play action and moving the pocket a little bit and easing the load on the offensive line a little bit. And when May has had time, he's been really effective. So
Yeah.
I think it really comes down to that offensive front and seeing what type of pockets they can give May.
Yeah, you mentioned Derek Brown. He is the one I know Mike Vrabel's going to have to game plan around on the defensive side of the football because he is just tossing people like rag dolls every game this year. I don't know if you've seen any of that footage, but
Oh, yeah.
he is a bad man. And then J.C. Horn on the outside obviously is their version of Christian Gonzalez, kind of an all pro corner. And obviously he, knock on wood, has been healthy so far this year. Switching to the defensive side of the ball for the Patriots offense for Carolina. For me, I would say, what can Bryce Young can have another clean football game, and can this offensive line protect Bryce and make time for him to go down the field to hit the weapons at his disposal? Because as you know, the Panthers lost their starting center and right guard most for a while, if not for the season, for Robert Hunt starting this past game against the Falcons. But you wouldn't have known it because Bryce got sacked one time, and it was otherwise a pretty clean game for this revamped offensive line, who has had experience starting together. So those are my keys and some players to watch on the offensive side of the ball for the Panthers. What would you say for defensively when Carolina's on the field offensively?
I would start by pointing to Mr. Almost Panther himself, Milton
Milton Williams.
Williams,
Yep.
because he has been a monster up to this point in the season. And him being on the interior where the Panthers just had two offensive line injuries, that's a big deal. And the combination of him and Barmore, they just work so well together that they are able to generate so much pressure on the interior itself that it can be a game changer. I think that that's probably where the Panthers are going to have to put more of their focus from a schematic standpoint and specifically Milton Williams. But I'm also interested to see because, like I mentioned, the Patriots, they've struggled with tackling at points this season. Even last week, where it felt a lot better with Spillane bouncing back, they still had, I think it was upwards of 10 missed tackles yet again. So I think that the Patriots are probably going to look into making a switch at linebacker. Like I mentioned earlier, Ellis ended up getting benched for Jack Gibbons. Gibbons, who was with Vrabel back in Tennessee a few years ago, so a little bit of a familiar face there. I'm curious to see what type of personnel the Patriots roll out there because, as we saw in week three, the Pats are still trying to figure out who their best players are. That's kind of the, underrated part as well of having so much roster turnover is that you have to draw up all the new X's and O's and get familiar with all of your players. That is still happening as we speak. That Vrabel is making in-game changes to who was actually out there on the field. So that's sort of a Patriots key, I believe, is that linebacker position and seeing how they are going to shape up as the season progresses.
Yeah. Yeah, and this game it really is going to come down to, I think, the trenches. I'm going to say that for a lot of Panther games this season. The
Same here.
on both sides of the ball is really key. Panthers were able to control the line of scrimmage against Atlanta last week in Charlotte, and then obviously played a big part in getting to the victory. And so. But before we switch back to kind of moving forward with predictions and kind of final thoughts on the game itself, I want to go back in the time machine for a little bit of nostalgia for you. For you, for people who are not Patriots fans, I think people like me, are you aware most people don't like the Patriots because of, and then not just because they won, right, a lot, but there's been some things around the years with the Patriots that people just don't like,
Mhm.
Spygate, Deflategate, all those things. But I'm not going to talk about that. What is your thought on the Belichick? I'm just going to announce it like this. The Belichick era obviously is what it was. He's now obviously no longer there. Mike Vrabel is now the new head coach after the Gerard Mayo experiment, who also was a fine player for New England as well. Um, as a Patriots fan and a content creator, do you have the right guy in place, Mike Vrabel? And for those who just may not be as familiar with the Patriots, um, I mean, obviously with Belichick, everyone's familiar with him, but was it time to move on from Belichick and then Vrabel and then Mayo? Was he not given a long enough leash as someone who kind of he was a good player there for you guys as well? So kind of talk about the Wayback Machine with the Patriots as your fandom kind of growing up, and then kind of where you're at with Vrabel now.
Until the wheels fell off. The problem is we didn't think the wheels would actually fall off, and that's what happened down the stretch. And the issue with Belichick, I still think that outside of his final season with the Patriots in 2023,
Yeah,
they still were able to be a more competitive team than the talent on the roster would have you assume. The issue is he was the one building those rosters, and he was not willing to give up any of the power to anyone else in the room. And draft mistake after draft mistake just led to the Patriots basically being where they were this offseason, where they needed to probably overpay for a handful of players just to try and reignite the franchise.
yeah,
And the Patriots, they haven't had a first round pick reach a second contract since Nate Solder, who they drafted in 2011. So we're going on a decade of failed first round picks, obviously where the failures start, and then just the fact that it didn't seem like Belichick was finding sort of these late draft gems like he used to be so good at doing so. So, as much as it hurt to see it end in such an ugly way, especially losing to the Jets, I believe was that last game of the season where it's
yeah,
like, okay, if we're gonna be bad, we're at least gonna beat the Jets. And then when that didn't even happen, it was pretty symbolic of just how bad things had gotten. And when Gerard Mayo, because the Patriots, they didn't go through an actual coaching search, it was
right.
that Gerard Mayo was on the staff and they had this successorship plan for him to take over once Belichick was done. And when it played under Belichick, he won Super Bowls here. He should have a great understanding of the game as a Belichick defense, and then grew up as a coach, was only with the Patriots under Belichick. So I was really talking myself into it, and then it was a disaster year one. He wasn't given necessarily an entirely fair opportunity just based off of, like I already mentioned, how bad the roster was.
Yeah.
He didn't do himself any favors with, especially he was terrible playing the media game. And I think in such an impatient fan base and type of environment in New England for the Patriots. Being the guy to replace the guy is always going to be difficult,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
especially in Boston, the media just ate him up and it just didn't. I don't think he was given a fair chance necessarily, but at the same time, I do believe that Mike Vrabel is a better coach, and I believe he probably should have been the coach last season if they went through an actual coaching search. I don't think that Kraft expected Vrabel to be available on the coaching market when Belichick was gone, because they say Belichick, they mutually parted ways, even though he got the boot if we're being real.
Right.
And then it was shortly after that Vrabel was fired from the Titans, and we just kind of wasted a year, it feels like, with Mayo. And I do have sympathy for him, but I'm also happy that we are moved on to Vrabel. Like I mentioned, it hasn't exactly been pretty up to this point in the season. A lot more fundamental issues than I was anticipating, but I'm optimistic about the long-term outlook, especially as well having Josh McDaniels back in the building, where a lot of Patriots fans are sort of iffy on him. But I think he's done a very good job up to this point in the season. Again, areas to improve. But the fact that not only is he here, not only is he somebody that coached Mac Jones to a Pro Bowl in 2021 after two failed head coaching experiments, Josh McDaniels isn't going anywhere as long as the Patriots want him because no other team is going to hire him as a head coach. And I think that for the Patriots, who have had five offensive coordinators in 5 years, having some sort of stability in the most important years of May's career is going to be super crucial to actually developing him the right way.
No, that's a really good answer, and I think even though this series between these teams, it's basically tied 4-4 all time against the Patriots. The Panthers are 2-2 at home. Carolina is, and then 2-1 there in Foxboro. Obviously, the Super Bowl 38 and Houston, everybody remembers that one with the high scoring offense in the second half, and obviously the last second field goal by Adam Vinatieri, sealed that game, but. Talking to you before the podcast, you probably remember 2013 Monday Night Football in Charlotte, where Kuechly may or may not have grabbed
Oh
Gronkowski
yeah.
there in the
Oh
end
yeah.
zone, and that led to no flags, and Tom let the ref have it there in the tunnel at
For
the end of
good
the game.
reason. Love Kuechly, Boston College legend. So
Yes,
I myself owned a Luke Kuechly jersey.
yes, yes.
But that was certainly a penalty.
Well, like we all know, the refs don't get all the penalties, as we know, watching football. But yeah, point being that this series is pretty much even though they play each other, it seems like obviously with the AFC, NFC every 4 years or so. And so I think this is going to be a really good matchup here in Foxborough. Do you have kind of going forward as we sort of move into the last here segment or so? Do you have a prediction for the game? And if you don't want to give a score or a prediction of who wins or loses, tell me kind of your overall thoughts on what you think might happen throughout the game.
I think this should be. It's tough because honestly, I wasn't expecting the Panthers to lay the whooping on Atlanta the way they did this past week. So
I,
I still
yeah,
I still have it as like it circled as a bit of a get right game, especially for the Patriots, where they lost to the Steelers, but they lost to themselves with the five turnovers. I mean, they almost doubled the Steelers' yards. They actually, outside of those turnovers, looked like a really good team. And I think that the Panthers, again, in a similar position as the Patriots in terms of, in that rebuilding like I would like to think the Patriots can eventually get to a point where they can be able to capitalize against teams that maybe don't have the top end talent as like a Bills within their own division. But at the same time, the Patriots, they have shown a pretty consistent theme of being a stupid football team at times. They have been dreadful at home in the past couple of seasons, and I would like to see the Patriots right those trends. I think that the Patriots can and will this win this game, but I don't think that until the Patriots prove it, any game is really a lock for them.
Yeah. Okay. That was mostly what I think you were gonna say. Yeah. I mean, what I think people need to get into their heads, and for the record, TJ and I will be discussing more on his podcast as well. For Panther fans, if you want to check out his podcast, he'll talk about that here at the end. We'll do that for tomorrow, as you if you want to listen to that after listening to this in consecutive days' time. But it's funny because people need to stop thinking of the Panthers as their get right game. I get 2 years ago, Bryce Young was a rookie, and we had the whole Frank Reich scenario and the Matt Rule situation 3 years before that. But this Panthers team's got some talent on the both sides of the ball, and we already went through Derek Brown and J.C. Horn being who they are. But I think so. I'm going to say similar to you. I think this game is going to be close, and I think it's going to come down to the wire. I think the Panthers are going to get the victory, but I don't think it's going to be by much. But I also could see them losing because I think they're in a pretty similar situation from a rebuild perspective. So I could see this game going either way, is what I'm trying to say. But I think it's just be careful, TJ. I'm just going to tell you this. What people, when it seems like when Panther players know when fans are trying to say this is like their get right game, and they come out and they prove people wrong. So Panthers don't want to be favored. That's never been their position. They love being under the radar. That's how they always get you. And so I'm excited just to see how this matchup plays out on Sunday there in Foxborough, 1 o'clock on Fox. TJ, where can people find your work that you're doing for the Patriots lead, and what podcast? Where can all podcasts be acquired?
Yeah, so my Twitter handle is Mabardy TJ, basically as it's spelled out on the screen. That's where I post all of my work, really. We just launched the Patriots Lead podcast last week, so that's where Ryan is going to be joining me later this week. So definitely should tune into that as well. And then I do writing as well for both the lead and fan sided, so you can check out some of my articles on my Twitter page as well.
Awesome. Well, TJ, been so great to have you here on Inside the Vault, Carolina Panthers podcast as we are previewing Patriots Panthers on Sunday up there in Foxborough. Before I let you go, any final thoughts on this game? I don't want to give your podcast stuff away if you want to ask some stuff there exclusively tomorrow. But is there something that maybe I haven't covered in this preview that you want maybe our Panther listeners to know about either the Patriots coming into this game, or uh, maybe a valid point or statistic, or whatever you want it to be, that might be valid as we close out this podcast.
I'm just excited to see this young quarterback duel. I think that Drake May, like I mentioned, for a lot of these turnover worthy plays, he's still top 10 in the NFL in EPA through 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Now, not exactly the I'm going to be curious to see May versus Bryce Young matchup because, again, this is the next generation of quarterbacks. The league is so top heavy at the position right now.
Yeah.
And every matchup we get between some of these young guys, I think, is a really interesting look ahead to what the future of the league looks like.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, it's gonna be so exciting game on Sunday. Both teams trying to get to 500, and one team obviously gonna be at 1-3 and kind of in a little bit more of a hole after Sunday's game. So check me out tomorrow on TJ's pod for Patriots Lead. But for Inside the Vault episode 82, TJ, thank you so much for coming on the show. We will talk to you down the road, and good luck on Sunday.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And that'll wrap up this episode, number 82 of Inside the Vault, a Carolina Panthers podcast. This has been the Patriots Panthers preview for this Sunday's game. Rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcast, and we will see you next time.